You know how every home has that one spot, the place you think about all day where you're finally able to exhale the second you walk through the door? For me, that spot is 100% my bed. I have completely become a bed monger, as I like to call them. My husband is all about just like being in bed all the time. I used to just be like a couch sitter, but now it's like I dream about my bed. And listen, let's be honest, who in your house tries to sneak into your bed the most? At my house, it is completely a competition. My kids love to go into my bed. Obviously, as I mentioned, my husband loves our bed so much. And it's like everyone knows that cozy earth sheets are where the comfort lives and where, you're going to find the most comfort in the entire house. And Cozy Earth has this amazing bamboo viscose bedding, and it is truly next level. It naturally wicks away heat and moisture, which means that you sleep several degrees cooler. And when I say it's hard to get out of the bed in the morning, I mean it. These sheets, plus the bubble cuddle blanket, which, by the way, my friend has. And so this is on my next, wish list, the next order that I placed from Cozy Earth. I'm getting the bubble cuddle blanket. It is mid-weight, ultra soft faux fur blanket with the dreamiest bubble texture. And my friends have very cozy homes also. And when I go to my friend's house and use her bubble cuddle blanket, I'm like, yeah, I don't plan to leave. And so it's not just bedding, it's a full on sensory retreat. On those days where you're feeling a little burnt out and when life feels a little too much, my cozy earth bed is the first place I want to be. It's calm, cool, quiet, and wrapped in the softest layers imaginable. I personally never knew bedding could actually feel this different, but once you try it, you'll get it and you will never go back. And here's the best part, it is a risk-free purchase. You get a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty because Cozy Earth knows once you feel discomfort, you are not letting go. So head to cozyearth.com and use my code HUMANHR for 40% off. And hey, if you get a post-purchase survey, don't forget, be sure to let them know you heard about Cozy Earth right here, because your bed should be more than just a place to sleep. It should be your happy place. Cozy Earth makes that possible. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Traci Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. This week, we are going to talk a lot about busyness and stress and sweating a lot of the small stuff, so to speak. And I do that with my guest, Peggy Sullivan, who joins me today. She is a renowned keynote speaker, author, and researcher whose viral TED Talk with millions of views has inspired audiences worldwide to overcome busyness and achieve peak performance without sacrificing well-being. Through her signature busy busting framework, trusted by Fortune 500 companies like Google, Bank of America, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, she reveals how packed schedules can reduce productivity and fulfillment. With humor, personal stories, and research-based solutions, Peggy empowers individuals and organizations to shift from hustle to purpose, unlocking greater engagement, resilience, and success. Peggy, I'm so excited for this conversation. I need you.
I'm here for you. I am here for you. Did
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh. Well,
Tracy,
yeah.
that over 94% of the population is over the top busy, wants to be less busy, and doesn't know how? Those are the stats. 94%.
I believe it. And I wonder who that 6% is. Are they people who who have solved the problem, or are they people who maybe have created enough wealth within their businesses maybe to reduce their busyness? I don't know. That would be interesting to find out. But nonetheless, it would be great if we could flip the percentages and 6% of people were over the top busy, wanting to be less busy. That would be probably your dream. One of your dreams, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely would be. I think the world would be a better place if we all got to step into our sweet spot, that place we know where everything is going really well. We're productive, we're healthy, we're happy, and for the most part, we end our days feeling like, hey, I did a good job. I got in what was important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, first and foremost, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week. And I think this topic, I've shared with you my own personal anecdotes on this. the I know the listeners are probably really going to love to hear some of your solutions around this and your ideas around busyness. Of course, you've written a whole book on this called Beyond Busyness, and it's all about achieving more by doing less. And actually, I think that's probably most people's goals. People often talk about how can I make the most money possible without exerting myself so hard. And it's kind of like, going back to just these age old sentiments about make money in your sleep, figure out how to, drive your business without being in it all the time. And it's easy to say those things, but it's much harder to figure out how to do them and to actively do those things. So where do we start? Like, where did this concept come from for you?
Well, I think you raise an excellent point, Tracy, and I'd like to address that first. And I think it's about redefining success. What does success look like? And you need to understand that your well-being is part of it, your health, your happiness, human connection, all those things are important to you living a well fulfilled life and being as productive as possible. And so it's really important that you take a step back and say, yeah, yesterday it was about money and power, but today I understand what I need to step into my sweet spot. And it involves well being, physical and mental health. And so, how do I get there?
Hmm. How? I
Well,
mean, that's the question, right?
yeah, it's the question, and it doesn't take as much as we think. It's actually a pretty easy framework. I spent so much of my life, I was a single mom. My husband left me because I didn't spend enough time with him. I had a stress-related heart attack by the time I was
Oh my.
50. I was a single mom running around all the time, and I had all these wake up calls, but I never really woke up. I kept on going back to being busy. And there's one wake up call that I had in particular that really made me see what was going on in my life. And it was when I came home from work again, exhausted, tired, another 8 p.m. night where I was looking in the cupboard for anything to eat because I was hungry and I skipped my meals. And I landed on this bag of stale pistachio nuts and I chomped them down happily and until I felt this like pull on my leg. And I looked down and it was my poor cat. And he was like, Mommy, would you mind feeding me too? I haven't eaten for 10
Oh
hours
no.
either. I threw some kibbles into his dish and I fell asleep on the couch. And I woke up to this horrible gagging noise and I looked up. It was my cat, Dazzle, throwing up pistachio nuts. And I looked down and it was
Oh
like,
no.
yeah, oh dear. I just ate cat food for dinner and didn't even realize it. And here's the thing. I remember thinking to myself, these nuts are salty. They're chewy. I better get to the store and get some new ones. They're really stale. But I didn't look down enough to realize I was eating cat food for dinner. And that's when it hit me. I was just going through this mindless haze, and what other things were going on that I really wasn't fully aware of. How many times had I lost my car in the grocery parking lot? My glasses were on the top of my head. My keys were in my purse. And what would life be like if we could be more intentional? So it was at that point in time I set out to figure it out. At first for myself because I didn't like the way that my life was going great. I mean, I had all of the success I ever wanted, a great job. I traveled the world, but I just didn't have time to breathe. And it just felt as though something was missing. And I was always feeling like I was on a rat race, on that hamster wheel and never quite getting to the finish line. So I started experimenting with different ways and I landed on this 3 step busy busting process that works. It just eliminates busyness and sets you up for success. And the thing about it is, take one macro step at a time, and you're start to feel relief. And then the more relief you feel, the more you want to keep it up. So let's without ado, let's get into this busy busting process. Step one is about subtraction. It's about eliminating low value activities. So you have time. We all just overstuff, overschedule ourselves, and we get to the end of the day and we just don't squeeze it all in. So the first step is eliminating low value activities. And I usually tell people the first place to look is either your email rabbit hole or the number of meetings that you're attending, because we all attend meetings where we don't get value and don't give value. And when you kind of stand back and say, hey, I know this meeting's been long standing. I know it's our departmental touch point, but can we do it less often? Or do I really need to be there? Or is everybody at the meeting really getting and giving value? When you start to question that, all of a sudden you find you can eliminate a couple of low value meetings. I have a customer, Nancy, who worked at a bank, and the one subtraction she did was the way she approached email. Instead of looking at email 59 times a day, which she did, she stop, start,
Mm,
she put a big old post-it note on our computer that basically said email twice a day, period. And so
mm.
she started her morning off with the things that were most important. And it was a habit change. She kind of looked at that post-it note and fought with it. But after a short period of time, she got used to it. And within a couple of weeks, she actually gained back 5 hours from not stopping and starting. And so I'm like,
Wow.
Nance, what would you do? What are you going to do with those 5 hours? And she started using it to manage her staff and deal more with some market research and some competitive analysis. And all of that went towards her bottom line metrics. So, it really turned out really good for her. Step two.
Amazing.
Yeah, step two is all about what I call mojo making. In life, we tend to think that happiness is this destination thing. I'm going to be happy when I get the promotion. I'm going to be happy when I get on vacation. I'm going to be happy when I get to the weekend. But the reality is, happiness is a super emotion. I wrote my first book about happiness, and I didn't really truly understand the biology of happiness and what happens when your brain lights up. You actually have more energy. Your brain works better. You have more focus, ability to fight off chronic disease. You're more likable to other people. I mean, happiness
Mm,
is a superpower. So why can't we add it, sprinkle it throughout our day and press the reset button? And so I encourage people to do small little happiness reset buttons as often as they can. My husband gets up later than me, and I'm not a morning person, so I get up in the morning, I grab my coffee, and I want to do a happiness ritual to kind of step into more alertness and more energy. And I do something as simple as brushing my cat. I get on the floor and I start to brush him, and he starts to purr. And then he starts being like so gosh darn cute, and he starts playing with me, and it just trickles this emotion within me, this happiness, this joy, this inner smile that gives me energy. And that takes 2 to 3 minutes. And we can all do these little things. And oh, by the way, they work in the corporate environment too. When I headed up United Healthcare's customer service department, we brought happiness rituals into the workplace, and they were just as simple as maybe a dance party, maybe we tell a joke, maybe we'd all hop on Zoom. But here's the thing, their metrics improved 33% within 6 weeks because they took
wow.
and press the reset button. So that's step two, mojo making. And step three is all about values vibing. It's about making decisions based on your values. Now I'm going to pause because I've been talking a lot, and I want to give you an opportunity so we can have more of a dialogue.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you. I think we talked about this just before that the listeners are going to love having some really tactical solutions to this. And there were some things that I thought about as you were sharing. And I love that you took us right there, that you answered the how right away, because now we're able to really think about our own experiences within this framework. But one of the things that you mentioned, or the phrase that you used, was mindless haze. And I think that's a very tangible phrase. Like, we all kind of can understand, especially I'm part of that 94% of people that you referenced earlier, of people who are like over the top busy and would like to be less busy. And one of the things that you mention in your book is that busyness is an addiction because it's a delusion. And man, I think that's totally true, because I am always busy, speaking from my own experience, always busy, and I like it that way, and also I don't. And that really kind of feels very reminiscent of someone that has lost some semblance of control to something that has become a burden on them.
Yeah.
Not to say,
Let's talk
yeah,
a
go
little
ahead.
bit about that. I mean, there is a biological reason that addiction is a disease, and that is every time you get something done, your brain signals dopamine to be released throughout your body. So you have this feel good endorphin, and you're like, hey, getting stuff done is good. I want to get stuff done. And it's not really about getting important stuff done. It's just about getting stuff done. So you could be taking
Mhm.
out the trash. You could be doing all these low value activities that don't get you any closer to productivity, satisfaction, well being, but yet you're feeling good. And the Psychiatric Society defines an addiction as anything that keeps you from what you normally would be doing, should be doing. So, hey, I believe busyness is an addiction. And that's why mojo making is step two in the process. Because, once you eliminate these low value activities, you still want that high that comes from getting things done and feeling good. And by replacing it with happiness rituals, you still get that endorphin lift.
Yeah. I'm curious, what do you say to someone who, maybe has, let's just say that they have to work two jobs or three jobs to make ends meet, and like they really would rather not. But that, maybe they're a single parent, and I know you referenced that you can relate to that as a single, having been a single mother. But what do you say to someone who maybe doesn't have the means in that moment to reduce like their work busyness? Is there a way to resolve some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really just about taking micro steps. I coach somebody by the name of Sally who worked two jobs. She was a single mother. Her life was one thing after another. And she finally had a wake up call. She tripped over some laundry that had been on the floor forever. And she just sat there and thought to herself, I am never going to have time for self care. I'm never going to have time for me. I'm never going to have time to cook for my family and do things we love. And she thought for a second, and her daughter picked up the phone and said, "Mommy's on the floor. Come see what's going on." And I rushed over. She was a neighbor, and I said, why don't you approach this differently? Why don't you just say tomorrow morning you're going to get up and claim 5 minutes for yourself? That's it. Get up 5 minutes earlier, have a cup of coffee without the kids, without everything on your mind, and just enjoy 5 minutes and see how you feel after that. And she did that for a week, and she's like, that really set my tone for the morning. So, you know what? I'm going to do that at work. And at work, instead of rushing off to meeting after meeting, she penciled in a 15-minute lunch. And that may not be much, but for her, it was about the ability to eat a sandwich, feel the sunshine on her face, walk outside, and just push reset. And that worked a lot too. And so all of a sudden, she's only spending 10 minutes on herself, right? Everybody has 10 minutes. And she told me the thing that she did the most was what she did with her mindset at the end of the day. She had been in this habit of looking at what she needed to do the next day, this to do list. So she would go to bed worried, how am I going to ever attack my to do list? And I said, well, why don't you flip your mindset? Why don't you go to bed feeling full? Why don't you count your blessings? Why don't you think about a couple of things you're grateful for and kind of turn off that worrisome stress?
Mm.
And it worked for her. So I think we all can take micro steps to improve our situation and take control. We all have 15 minutes in our day. It's not undoable, and the reality is we do have control of how we spend our time. We do have control to speak up at work and say, if the goal of the organization is XYZ, I want to spend my time and my energy on XYZ, and there are these other things that are distracting me, and let's talk about them and see if they can be eliminated. There's always a way to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I really love what you just shared about how at work, like if we know that there's this North Star goal and we're doing all of this other junk that doesn't necessarily drive toward that goal, there's such power in saying this is not solving those things. Now, of course, there are parts of our jobs that maybe are a little bit more mundane or just are part of our day to day that don't necessarily feel as though they're connected to the overall goal. But to your point, I'm walking away with the understanding that there's a way to look at our everyday, week, month, quarter, year and say, I want a more meaningful existence. And so I'm going to take control of this, which actually kind of ties back to that third step that you were kind of talking about, which is values vibing, unlocking a more meaningful life. And so I'd love to hear like what does that mean? How do we unlock the vibe, so to
Yeah,
speak?
it absolutely. I got very curious about values probably about 8 or 10 years ago because I would speak on values and I would walk into a room and I'd be like, so who knows their values and how important are your values? And everybody would raise their hand and say, my values are really important to me. And then I'd ask them what are their values. And they usually put down trust or family or
Mhm.
a couple of things. And then all of a sudden they pick their head up and look around the room. And they'd be like looking at what everybody else was writing, or they'd be Googling values, gotta have values, gotta compete with my neighbor. And it made me realize that we looked at values not necessarily in the way that we should be approaching them, and that if we maybe change the paradigm on values and what equates to a well-lived life, that would be a good way. So I asked 12,000 people, what equates to a good life? What do you need in your life in order to have a well-lived, productive life, personally and professionally? And that's really important, personally and professionally. The line is blurred, and it's so important that we realize that we need both to be happy. And so what I discovered was that there are four core values that lead to this, and they are energy management, which is really all about self-care, connection, and that's human connection, whether it's what we're doing right here, right now, or I make a couple of phone calls at the end of the day to connect with my besties. Growth is the third value. My father used to say, "Toots, a day without learning something is a lost opportunity." But it was so much more than that, because when you learn new things, you realize that you can do hard things and you build your resiliency muscle. And that is a really, really great thing. Um,
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. Thank you for walking through that. And I really want to emphasize for the listeners that your book does a really nice job of articulating and illustrating actually how we can really improve our overall well-being, and even more than that, create the what we consider to be a meaningful existence and a meaningful life. And one of the things that you kind of opened up about in the book was, I guess it was kind of related to one of these aha moments for you, which was a car accident that you had gotten into. And of course, most people have an accident at some point in their lives. However, you kind of related this back to, wow, I need to think about how what I'm doing and how I'm living and why I'm so busy and all of that. Do you mind talking through like that moment for you?
Yeah, it was, I had left my job to take care of my father. He passed away, and so I decided to start a nonprofit. And after about 6, 8 months of recruiting board of directors and planning, we had this big event, and we were all really excited, and there were going to be thousands of people there, and I was getting ready for the event, and I was getting really excited, and I started to stress myself out about everything that I wanted to remember to do, and were my i's dotted and were my t's crossed. And I got into the car, and I looked great, but I wasn't focused on driving, getting from point A to point B. I was that distracted driver that was thinking about my to-do list. And next thing I knew, I was upside down in the car, and there was an ambulance coming to take me. And I kept on thinking, oh, well, I can still get to the event. This is my event. I mean, that's how sick I was. I just
Mhm.
kept on thinking I can still make this work. And as I was in the hospital, and I can remember hearing the crinkling glass, I can remember them sewing the stitches, the noising, from the stitches. I can remember the phone call I met to my team basically saying, I'm not going to be there. And it was all because of this mindless haze. And,
Mhm.
that particular wake up call was one after I had been in remission for a while, and I just got so buried by something I wanted to accomplish. And I think that's why busyness is an addiction. My name is Peggy. I am a busyness addict. I'm in recovery. I slip up once in a while, and when I do, the thing of it is I go back to step 1, 2, and 3. I subtract low value activities, I mojo make, and I take a look at my values. And I'd like to talk just a little bit more about values vibing, because it's not enough just knowing what core values light you up. It's about putting them into action. And so people often ask me, well, how do you do that? And I say, I keep a values report card. Every Wednesday night and Sunday night, I take my 4 values, I write them down on a piece of paper: energy management, connection, growth, authenticity, and I rate myself 1 to 5. And then I look at the one that I didn't do so well with, and I'm like, ooh, maybe I didn't work out, or maybe I didn't get sleep, or maybe I didn't eat properly. I'm going to focus on that over the next week. And I will actually hard code it into my schedule. And it's just this continuous improvement process of just checking in with, I know these are the 4 things that light me up. So, just spend 3 minutes, grade yourself, keep a values report card, and it's just that simple.
I love that. It's really another great tactical way to really improve how we interact with the world around us. Also, I mean, I'm really reflecting a lot on my own experience, and I, often find myself scrolling in my work email, looking at Slack messages. My boss recently left the organization, so I've been taking on a lot more. And so I've found since then that I am kind of going back to some of the old patterns that I used to follow, which was, kind of absent of boundaries, running myself into the ground, which is, again, as I shared with you, I'm just getting over being sick. And I feel like I've been sick all winter, even though I do have toddlers and that's kind of the nature of the game. But still, I also know myself, and I know that it's not all because my kids get sick. And so when I think about what you're sharing around, like, hey, this is something simple and effective that we can do every single day to really stay focused on our goals. It's a great way to measure our achievement, and also for people maybe like us who do maybe have this natural pull to be more busy because of these things that have been ingrained in us, whether it's nature or nurture. I would imagine that being goal oriented is a big part of being able to overcome that, because then it's like you're accomplishing something else in a way that is better for you and healthier for you and more productive in the end. Um,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
I don't believe in work-life balance. I truly believe sometimes professionally you really need to dig in, and that's what's called. And then
Mhm.
sometimes you really need to dig in personally. You know, you talk about having kids. I mean, your day changes all the time when you've got children in the picture, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to deal with their needs and what they need. And so I think it's just, really important that we recognize the most single relevant issue is we have control. We're not victims. We get to make decisions in what we do and how we do it. And when we start using that ability to make better choices, to be intentional about how we spend our time, that's when everything stops being so stressful because everything has purpose and intention. And then at the end of it, there's reward and satisfaction.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned stress and this I was just talking to my husband about this, that stress is such a link between, someone's happiness and also their immunity and how they can, protect themselves from so many things, whether it's like the common cold or just, ensuring that they're not experiencing stress in a like at a longer term capacity and a more consistent capacity. And of course, busyness and stress are so connected. Is there an element here that um, maybe this busyness is perpetuated by this level of stress that people feel they need to have in order to get things done? Is there
Yeah,
relationship there?
that's a great question because stress is unavoidable. And I think in life, there are two types of stresses, right? There's the micro stress where you're just frustrated. The other day, literally, my front tooth fell out. I needed to film. I
Oh
was
no.
like beside myself because I knew I needed to do a film and I didn't have a front tooth. And then I took a step back and I said, I'll call the dentist. This is fixable. Why am I stressing out over this? Just let it go. Make a joke of it. And, so I got on the video saying, hey, you think you've had a bad day? Well, guess what? My tooth just fell out, but it's going to be fixed and it's fixable. And here's the lesson learned is that when we spend our resources on these small micro stresses, we don't have attention and resources for the things that really matter. And there are macro stresses, when people are sick, when people die, when you've got financial challenges, those are the big stresses. And if you can pour your energy into understanding, okay, first and foremost, if this is a micro stress, I'm just going to get over it. I'm not going to let it consume me. And then focus on your macro stresses and, what one or two things can I do to kind of work away this stress and make it more manageable. And I find myself, I'm not stressing the small stuff, as much anymore. Last night I broke a glass and there was glass everywhere and I was so annoyed. And it was the first time I had drunk something that had color. So there was color all over the content. It was a zero and it was bright red and it was all over the cupboard and all over the floor and all over my shirt. And I was like, and then I just kind of realized, I'm like, this is all fixable. You throw your shirt in the one, you pick it up, whatever. Like why are you letting this frustrate you?
Hmm. That's a great point. I think that a lot of people can learn a lot from your own experiences and again all of this knowledge that you're imparting on us, and I really like that this is something that we all can do every single day, almost like a mantra. If there's something that we do, whether it is having our morning coffee or, going for a walk in the middle of the day, those things really do go a long way. So I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned so much from our discussions and also from your book. And I do want to see if there's anything else that maybe we haven't talked about that you think the listeners really need to think about or should walk away with.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, people don't understand that the strategies that I'm sharing with them work personally and professionally. There's no boundaries between our personal and our professional life. And if you're in a situation at work and you're a manager and you want your team to be more productive, more engaged, these are the exact things you can implement for your team so that they can become happier, healthier, more productive, and reach your organizational goals. And so I urge people to think about this in their professional environment and to take it to our teams because it's a great tool to use to improve organizational effectiveness and productivity, satisfaction, all those things that we're struggling with right now. There is a way to solution for them that isn't all that disruptive.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And actually, as we're talking about this, I hear my children banging on my door. They're probably like, "You're talking about busyness? Get more busy, come play with us." And it's just, it's a reminder. I'm sure I muted, but I'm sure that the listeners probably caught a little bit of that. But it's just funny because as we're talking about all of this and as you share the personal and professional relevance, I have this physical reminder of like why I'm doing what I'm doing, and also not to let the professional over consume me so that I don't have time for the personal. And I think that I know that there are a lot of listeners out there who are parents or who are caregivers, and they probably do feel some sort of pull to that, like how everything I'm doing for work, everything that I'm doing for my business is in an effort to improve the lives for my family members and for myself. And yet sometimes we find ourselves caught into the vortex of overconsumption with work. So I really think that what you've shared around how it can be applied on both ends in both spheres just makes it all the more important for us to really walk away with these solutions and these tactical ways of making our lives even more meaningful. So Peggy, thank you so much. You've really done a number on my own reflection of my own experience.
Well, that's great. I just keep on thinking about what the world would look like if we all had more intention and purpose. We'd be more
Yeah.
productive, we'd reach our goals, we'd have more love, human connection,
Yeah.
satisfaction, and it's just really about this simple concept that you can achieve more by doing less because you're focused.
Yeah, I love that. Peggy, thank you so much. We're going to have the show notes linked with your book and your TED Talk and everywhere that the listeners can find you. But I'd love to also give you the opportunity to highlight where the listeners are best suited to connect with you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to my website, peggysullivanspeaker.com, but I also invite you to reach out to me via email, hello at peggysullivanspeaker.com. I love helping people. I know how hard this is and how overwhelming life can be. And sometimes it's just about seeing a path and having somebody fresh looking at you saying, hey, you got a couple of low value activities in there. Why don't sometimes it takes a second eye or a third eye, and I am just here to help. And I think the world deserves more intention and more purpose. I think we're all craving that. So let's together make it happen.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. What a call to action. I love it. Peggy, thank you again so much. And for all the listeners, definitely take a look at the show notes. You will not want to miss being able to read Peggy's book and get connected and learn more. Thank you so much.
You are quite welcome.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.